there, and welcome back. I'm so glad you're joining me today. My name is Stephanie, and I am the Everyday Sewist. And just like that, here we are in 2026. And I'm going to do a little bit of a recap today of 2025. And then I have a whole bunch of stuff and ideas to share with you for 2026. So I hope you'll stick with me. And if you haven't already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button and also check out membership options that are now open. And I'll be expanding those little by little as I can get things uploaded and ready for you. With that, I want to also say the first live YouTube stream for members will be on January 10th from 10 a.m. to noontime Eastern Standard Time. So if you'd like to join me for a little Q&A, bring your project so that you can sit and sew at the same time that we have a little chat. I will be doing that on January 10th, and you do have to be a member, and the easiest way to join is at the Let's Be Friends membership level, which is just 99 cents a month. So if you'd like to give it a try, then pop in and join us on January 10th. And the date following will be February 14th, also from 10 to noon. So those are going to be some fun things to look forward to. So let me do a little recap then of 2025. For my old finish today behind me, I decided to bring back one of my favorite finishes from last year. And this is a pattern called Long Time Gone by Jen Kingwell. And it is a scrap lover's delight. And the reason that I chose this one is because I'm going to be talking a lot about scraps this year. The next episode, I will be talking about using strips in scrap quilts. And then after that, I have at least 4 other different types of scraps that we're going to talk about. So we're going to be going into those a lot this year. And so I hope you'll come back and join me and look for those episodes if you need a little bit of help in working through your scraps. So that is my Long Time Gone. That was in episode 8. I talked about that one a little bit more. The other reason that I wanted to talk a little bit about this quilt or have it out today, it has several elements in it that I will be talking about in future episodes. This is a scrap lover's delight. I actually have on my wish list, my plans for this year, to make my own similarly styled orphan block quilt so that I can use up scraps, so that I can use up vintage blocks that I have found and mix them in with some of my own scrappy leftovers. And this quilt is perfect for using up all kinds of shapes and sizes of scraps. So if you like this, then this would be a fantastic project that you could work on over the next year and little by little tackle different kinds of scraps. Of course, I didn't make it in a year. This one took me several years to finish. You might have better luck than I did, but it was really fun and it was very, very rewarding and satisfying. So let me tell you a little bit about my year of 2025, my year in review. First of all, as I was looking up some information to share with you today, I found an old list that I had written at the end of 2024 of the top 20 projects that I wanted to complete in 2025. Well, as the year went on and as I was keeping my spreadsheet, I forgot to look back at that list. But I did pretty well. I had my top 20 projects that I wanted to finish, and I finished 5 of them with 2 more of them in progress. One of them is my temperature quilt that's just right here, And the temperature quilt is ready to be quilted, and my Stash Buster quilt, which is also ready to be quilted. So I could end up in the next couple of weeks having a couple more of those projects done. I also had a list of 7 skills that I wanted to work on. I did one of them. That's good. I got one of them done. So the other ones I'll reevaluate and I'll see if I want to carry those forward. So I had my spreadsheet, and I love this spreadsheet. If you are interested in it, I did post it on my YouTube channel as a free download. So if you need a spreadsheet, then you can check that out. I don't know how many projects are on this, lots and lots, but I'm going to try to focus on a little bit smaller bit of those projects. Anyway, other things I did in 2025. I went on the statewide Indiana shop hop, and I went to all 53 shops. And I went to some in Michigan too. I visited Colorado and Wyoming, went to the State House in Wyoming, went to Iowa once, went to New York twice, had my mom come here for 5 weeks, and hopefully we can do that again this year. We got our wood floors refinished. I gave up caffeine, but I kept my membership to the wine club at Cooper's Hawk. I bought a new car. I finished 45 of my own projects, and I quilted a bunch of projects for other people. I went to 3 quilt shows. I went to the Bloomington Quilt Show, the Wisconsin Show, and our Guild's show. I hosted a reunion, a luncheon for my old bee members, which was probably one of the best experiences this year that I had. I posted 16 videos and 17 shorts. I went on 86 trail runs, and I ran around the block 55 times for a total of about almost 400 miles, which is much, much less than I did in 2024. And so no wonder I gained a little bit of my weight back. Oh well, I'll have to work on that again this year. So next, my most notable finishes for 2025 out of those 45 finishes. It was kind of hard to choose, but I'd say The Long Time Gone was definitely one of my most notable finishes, and that was in episode 8. Also, my epic bow tie quilt that I started in 2012 and finished this year, that's in episode 11. The sampler quilt that I started in 2006, and I posted it in episode 3. I was also really pleased to finish my watercolor quilt from a class that I took in 2006, and I shared that in episode 5. I did a Kawandi style lace mat sized project. I started it in April of 2025, and it's in episode 14. I made a very simple quilt called Boxes and Stars with leftovers from a quilt that I made in 2006, and that's in episode 10. I made the Shibori Vases quilt that I started in 2018, and that's in episode 9. And I love those projects because it was something very new to work on, and I got some of my very, very oldest UFOs finished. So those were all very satisfying projects to finish. Of the 45 completed projects, the 2 oldest ones were from 2006. 16 of those projects were started prior to this year, which means I started 29 projects this year and finished them all this year. And my oldest UFO that I still have in a bin is from 1999. That hasn't changed, and it probably won't change this year either. So I hope you will tell us and share in the comments about what your very favorite finish was, if there was something that really stood out to you as an accomplishment that you were really, really happy about, really excited about, because I think we'd all love to hear about what other people are working on. So that is my year in review. And next I want to share with you some of the projects that I carried over into this year, some that I'm currently working on. I have one finish. Let me grab that. So this project was the very last quilt that I finished in 2025. Let's see. So this quilt behind me now is my very last finish for 2025. I did not make the top. The quilt top was made by my friend Sonia, who I told you about a couple months ago, and she passed away in September. And my friend Jane and I are doing our best to finish some of her UFOs, some of her projects that she had left behind, and get them back to her family. And this is one of them. It's just a very simple block with 2 white strips and a print in the middle, 2 white strips and a print in the middle. And it finishes at 54 by 54. This is probably a Kona white that she used for this. I chose just a really happy blue for the back and a blue binding. And I quilted it in a design called Astrid, which has stars and feathers in it. And stars were one of her favorite blocks, so that's why I wanted to use a pattern with stars. And I'm really glad to be able to get this one done and back to her family. And the second quilt that of hers that I've almost finished, that I'm working on the binding, is this one. So let me put this one up for you. This is also Sonia's quilt. I quilted it with a design called Collecting Coins. I did have a video for it that will be up on the YouTube on Shorts in another couple of days if it's not up there already. She chose a backing. She had the backing already ready for this one. And it's a wonderful K-facet print. And I just have to finish putting the binding down on this one, and then that one can go back to her family as well. I think the pattern is called a zipper of some type, zipper quilt, because this color goes down into here and this color goes down into the next block. So this is the unit where you have your 2 solids and then they intersect. They join in this little zipper section in the middle. So that is almost going to be a finish for this year. I have a couple other things that I am working on. This one is a giant-sized potato chip block. So this is a extra large sized potato chip block. And each of these bricks is 5 inches cut, 5 inches by 9.5 inches. And you start with 2 in the center, and then you put 1 on the top and the bottom, 2 on the sides, 2 on the bottom and top, and then it goes outward from there with rows of 3 and 4 and across and so on. And you can make it as big as you want to by adding more bricks. And so the instructions for this is from Sew Yeah Quilting. And I just need to get the back on it and get it quilted and bound. The cool thing about this block is that a lot of you may know a potato chip block as being something that's 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches. But because these are flannels, I wanted to experiment with this design that was shared at Sew Yeah Quilting. And I wanted to see what it would look like with really big bricks. And so it makes a great stash buster. I think you can use fat quarters or scraps or any size brick that you want to make. They had suggested using a 6.5 by 12.5 inch size block, but for my purposes, my fabric was better suited to using it as 5 by 9.5. This finishes at 45 inches by 54 inches. And because there's some cute kid prints in it, I think that it will be a really good size for kids. So I am close to getting that one done and on its way. And then on New Year's Day, I decided that I wanted to start a new project for the new year. I'd actually thought about it a few days ahead of time, and so I selected my pattern before then, and it's called Neptune by Villa Rosa Designs. So I like purples, but the color of the month that I'm going to tell you about later is blue. So I am making all of where she has the dark purples, I'm going to be making my columns in blues, darker blues. And then in this top section, I'm going to be using lights, not necessarily whites, lights with prints in them. And I have all of those pulled, and maybe I can pop a picture up there of my whole fabric pull. So I have most of the columns ready to be constructed, ready to sew together. I just pulled this one over for you to see. That is my New Year's Day start. I know that Jen of Two Tall Stitchers, I think she probably started something new on New Year's Day because I got the idea from her a year ago. So thanks, Jen. And it's great to share ideas like that and have something fun to do at the beginning of the year. And this is a really easy sew, and it's going to be helping me to use up some of my blue stash. So that is a new start. Also wanted to finish this month. I want to finish quilting this little piece. I did some of it in the car back when we were traveling out to Colorado, but I didn't get it all done. I don't know if you can see where the quilting is on that. I'm hand quilting it, and I would really like to have that one done by the end of January. You see my temperature quilt over here. My temperature quilt, like I said, is ready to have the backing made and quilted and bound. And I am also still working on the Bonnie Hunter mystery. We are up to clue 7 as the time that I'm recording this. And here are the little star blocks for, let's see, this was part 5. We made a whole bunch of the star blocks from our units, and I think I showed this one to you last time. And now we are sewing more units together, and I have sets of these. This was part 6, where we sewed other units together to make those from previous clues. So I have that part all done, but I haven't started on clue 7 yet. So my January sewing is going to be to work on Neptune, this one, and to work on the mystery quilt, and then get those other projects quilted and bound. I have lots of other goals for 2026. So let me just take a minute to share some of those with you, because maybe they are things that you would enjoy doing as well. I showed you my Christmas postcard quilt an episode or 2 ago, and I do think I'd like to do another postcard-sized project. It's kind of like a little mini collage, and do sort of a photo journal series in the same way that I did the little postcard. but I have some photographs that I would perhaps like to turn into little mini quilts. And so I'd at least like to make another one of those. I'd also like to rescue some old quilt tops that just need to be backed, quilted, and bound. And I'm going to just see if I can find some on there. I'm doing Sonia's quilts right now, and so I haven't really looked on eBay or any other source or antique malls. I haven't really looked for anything like that yet because I'm busy. I want to get Sonia's done first before I take on other projects like that. I'd like to do some more hand quilting, which is why I got that other little project back out. If I didn't do hand quilting, I'd like to do another Kawandi style piece. If I could do one of each, that would be really great. I have some more ideas of things that I want to try on my long arm. So I hope to have a couple of quilt tops, and maybe that's why I'm thinking I'm going to get a couple off of eBay that I can experiment on. And as I showed you my long time gone quilt at the very beginning, I want to do an orphan block quilt. I want to do another quilt similar to Long Time Gone. I have 2 buckets of leftover blocks and parts and pieces, and I'd like to put those into an orphan block. And I'd like to finish a few more of my UFOs. I did, how many did I say I did this year? 16 of them that I started before the year of 2025. I don't know if I'll get another I'll get that many of my older UFOs done, but any of them I get done will be a good thing. Another goal I have is to use a template that I have, but I haven't used yet. Maybe like an apple core, or I have a bunch of templates, so I just have to look through and pick one. I might even think about using crumbs or scraps to piece that template. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a single piece of fabric. I'm interested in delving into that a little bit. And then I want to keep processing some scraps so that I can use them in my Rainbow Scrap Challenge projects. And I do have some things that I am cutting for right now. That is something that I'm going to talk about in my next episode when I talk about scraps and how I use them. So that will be coming up shortly. So, have I bought anything recently? No, I haven't. I am really going to back off on my spending this year on quilting supplies. I had such a good time doing the shop hop last summer, but I still have a lot of my projects left from that, going to all of those shops, and I want to work on some of those. And so I'll just say it's not that I won't buy anything. I think I just want to be very intentional about what I get. So for instance, right now I showed you the Stash Buster quilt that I was working on, and I do need to get a backing for that. I decided that I wanted to get Minky for it. I could use regular cotton fabrics for it, but I don't want to. I have made the choice that I want to have Minky on this because I want it to be a nice couch throw, and with its Star Wars theme, I want it to be like a movie night kind of quilt. So I don't mind getting a backing like that because it serves a specific purpose that I have in mind for that quilt. But I'm going to really try hard to avoid random purchases, things on the spur of the moment, those fabrics that catch our eye and that we love so much. So kind of in addition to that, I know that obviously pre-cuts and fat quarter bundles and things like that are so popular, but I think I'm going to try to avoid buying a bundle or a pre-cut unless I have a plan for it, because sometimes you're going to need more yardage than what's in the pre-cut. And until you have your project picked out, How do you know? What are you going to buy? How do you figure that out, or how do you resolve that for yourself? Do you always go ahead and buy 3 yards of a border, or do you buy extra for a backing? And if so, that's okay. At least you know that when you go to use it, you'll have what you need or what you want of that fabric. But I'm going to try to take a little bit more of a reserved approach, because as you've seen before me, behind me, a lot of times I have lots and lots of bolts of fabric to use up. And so I'm just going to try to be a little more reserved about my fabric purchases for this year. So we talked about sew-alongs quite a bit in my last video. That would be in episode 16. I mentioned a bunch of them that were coming up. And thanks to a couple of you, I have a couple more to add to that. So thank you, Liz. Liz suggested a sew-along starting in late February. And you will find her on Conquering Mount Scrapmore with Brenda on Facebook. Her sew-along is going to be called Twinkle Twinkle, and doesn't that just sound cute? I want to go check that out. And Diane, thank you for your information, for passing that along. She says that Riley Blake does a free block of the month block, and I took a quick peek at their website. Riley Blake is a fabric manufacturer, and on their main website page, you'll be able to find where they have all of their either free patterns or sew-alongs. I'm not sure which one it's called, but they have all of their past years sew-alongs on there as well. So here's a thought. A lot of people don't like mysteries, right? You want to know what you're making from the very start. And I totally get that. Doing a mystery is not for everybody. So as Amy wrote in one of her comments, thanks Amy, she said she doesn't like that surprise, that mystery, but she found a block of the month from last year that she's really tempted to do. And so if you are in that camp that you don't like to have a mystery, you could go check out Riley Blake and go see if there are some of their past sew-alongs, or and from many of these other designers will still have their past year's block of the months up on their websites. And maybe one will catch your eye and it will be something that you'll want to make. And you could do that one right alongside what other people are doing in their current year. So I just wanted to kind of pass that thought along. A couple others from Diane, not only the Riley Blake, but Erica Arndt of Confessions of a Homeschooler. She also does a block of the month, and so does Jessica Dayon, D-A-Y-O-N. And I will put those links in the description box below. I will try to put as much information into those description boxes as I can, with all kinds of links for you to check out on the things that I mention here. So lots of fun sew-alongs coming up, and if you know of any that you can pass along, please go into the comments, or you can email me at everydaysewist@gmail.com. And so you could do either one of those, pass on ones that you hear about, because it's fun to share all that information. Other ideas for you as we're going into the new year. I'm not saying I'm doing all of these. I just want to pass on some fun things that I read about. If you hadn't heard about them, then maybe one of those ideas will sound really fun to you, and it'll get you motivated or inspired or excited to work on some of your projects. So here they are. So you could try doing a kit per quarter, and someone nicknamed that a kitty quarter. Kitty ears. So Anyway, if you would like to do a kit per quarter, I think there's a group online that is trying to do that. And even if not, maybe that is an achievable goal to do one kit per quarter. I know I have one this year that I'm really thinking about doing, and it was from a block of the month that I purchased several years ago, and I have never cracked it open. So I'm thinking I might do something like that and work on that. It'll take me more than a quarter to do it, but I could check it out and get started on it. Two, the other one you could do is to try to see how many tops you could finish into quilts this year. I know I've read and seen photos from people's quilting closets, and they have tons of quilt tops waiting to be quilted. So, how many of those might you want to try to get done? And here's the bigger thing. I want to know why we get stuck sometimes, and why that quilt top hanging on a hanger waiting to be finished. What happened? I'm just curious. I know, as a couple of examples, that Stash Buster quilt that I told you about, I had done what I was going to do with it way back in June last year. I thought I was going to make this really cool back for it, and I thought I was going to sew words and do a quote from a movie, and I had that all planned out in my head. Well, turns out that I kind of didn't have time to do it, and I kind of, I guess, lost interest in doing it. I didn't have another plan, and so it hung in the closet until I finally figured out that I needed to move along with it, come up with and just do something simpler. And therefore that was the one I decided to just put a minky backing on it, and it would be perfectly wonderful to use with a minky backing on it, and maybe even preferable to a lot of people because minky is just incredibly soft and cozy. So once I figured out the true purpose of that quilt, it made the decision to change gears a little bit easier. So that's one example of it's something that sat for a while, and I'm wondering if that happens to you too. And so I think maybe we have to figure out, if we're stuck, how to get unstuck, and maybe make a plan for getting some of those tops done so that they can go out into the world. So that's a challenge that you might be interested in, is to see how many tops you could finish in a year. And actually, I did that a couple of years ago. I used to have 30 tops or so, lots and lots of quilts that were so close to finishing. And it was right after COVID and after I closed my shop that I decided that that would be the year that I would get those done. And since that happened a few years ago, I have never had more than maybe 3 or 4 quilt tops hanging in my closet at any one time. So I've really been able to keep up with it once I got through that initial load. So if that might be a thing that feels good to you, you might decide that this is the year that you want to try to get through as many of those as you can. Another idea, and I know you've heard this one, but I'll just remind you that it's okay if you want to donate or pass some of these projects on to somebody else to finish. Whether it's a guild or an organization that you really care for, if you don't want to take it any farther, that's okay. But you might consider how else you might move it along and move it out of your space to make space for the things that you do want to work on. And that kind of goes along with the next idea, And that is that if you might not have heard, maybe you've heard of the Declutter Challenge with Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I am doing the challenge again this year. It will be my third or fourth year to do the challenge. It's really, really helpful to go through the prompts and watch her videos, read her blog posts on them. I don't think you necessarily have to do all of the prompts day after day after day. That's a lot. I've read a lot of posts where people are saying it's taking them an hour, 2 hours, and just to make a dent in whatever the category is of the day. And so it can be a lot, but you could use it and really stick to the timer idea that she has. Just give it a go for 15 minutes and see where that takes you, because I believe that even doing 15 minutes of tidying up or decluttering or taking one thing out of your sewing area can make a big difference. And I just recently was able to pass along a couple of extra chairs and an extra table that I had. It doesn't sound like much, but it really opened up my space to not have that extra furniture in there. And so you might consider doing some type of a declutter. And I'd say that Karen's program on this is so well thought out that you should definitely check it out if you think that that is something you want to do. And the other one that I have for you is Quilt Bingo. And if you like to play a little game and come up with some really creative prompts for yourself, you can check out Quilt Bingo. Just Google it. I found it under melbeachquilts.com. I'll put a link below. It's really cute. She's got some great ideas for you to have a really creative, fun year of quilting by including things like traveling to quilt shows or getting together with your buddies for sewing days or retreats and all kinds of things. So if you'd like to play a little bingo, go check out her website. Finally, I thought I would introduce my word of the year. That is something I really have not done much before, but I thought I would give that a try this year. I just will have to remind myself to keep track of it in some way. My word is going to be reduce. That means I want to reduce my spending. I want to reduce my clutter. I want to reduce my scraps. Anybody else? And I want to reduce my pile of UFOs. As always one of my goals is to work my way through those UFOs, those pesky UFOs. So I will try to keep track somehow of how I am doing on reducing and keep you posted on that. I hope that maybe one or two of these ideas will spark an idea for you or an inspiration for you as well. And as we take a couple of weeks oftentimes in January to make some plans for the year, maybe some of these will help you. And I think that's it for me this time. Thank you so much for being here. I also want to thank a couple of my new members, and I'm so thrilled that you're joining me. And that's Sonia and Parkium. So if you would like to join, just hit that button, choose your membership level, and join me for open sews and Q&A sessions that we'll have at least once a month so that we can have some great talks and share information and share some fun times. Thanks again for being here. Bye-bye from the Everyday Sewist.